The desert sunset painted the horizon in flames, turning the scrubland into a sea of copper and gold. I'd seen 1,000 such evenings from the porch of Shadowcreek Ranch, but this one felt different. Like the sky itself was holding its breath, waiting. That's when I spotted them. A woman and child stumbling across my land, looking over their shoulders as if demons themselves were in pursuit. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The woman's dark hair whipped wildly in the evening breeze as she half-dragged, half-carried a small boy toward my ranch house. Her clothes were city clothes, expensive but torn and dusty now. The boy couldn't have been more than 5, his face buried against her shoulder, small arms wrapped tight around her neck like he feared she might vanish if he let go. I set down my coffee mug and reached for the shotgun that was never far from reach. 20 years in this unforgiving corner of Arizona had taught me caution first, hospitality second. But something in the desperate way they moved made me lower the gun before they even reached the steps. "Please," the woman gasped, her voice raw from thirst or fear or both. "Please, help us." Her eyes darted back toward the empty road that wound through the desert to my isolated home. Even in the fading light, I could see the terror in them. The boy lifted his head slightly, revealing a face streaked with dirt and tears. Dark eyes, wide with fear, assessed me from beneath a mop of black curls. He clutched a worn stuffed rabbit to his chest with one hand, the other fist balled in his mother's shirt. "They're coming after them," she said, the words tumbling out between ragged breaths. "My son and me. Please, we just need somewhere to hide. Just for tonight." I had heard plenty of stories in my 43 years, most of them lies. But the bruise darkening her cheekbone and the raw desperation in her voice spoke louder than any words could. "Get inside," I said, nodding toward the door. I scanned the horizon once more. Nothing but desert and approaching darkness. But desert nights are tricky. They can hide all manner of things in their shadows. She hesitated, relief and wariness battling across her face. "I can pay," she said, fumbling with a small purse. "I didn't ask for money," I replied, more gruffly than intended. "Just get your boy out of the night air." The ranch house wasn't much. A simple 2-bedroom stone structure that had stood against sun and storm for nearly a century. But it was solid, and more importantly, defensible. I followed them inside, locking the door behind us. The woman stood awkwardly in the center of my living room, the boy still clinging to her like a barnacle. Up close, I could see she was younger than I'd first thought, maybe early 30s. With the kind of beauty that comes from strength rather than softness. There was an intelligence in her eyes that matched the wariness. "I'm Daniel McCall," I said, setting the shotgun in its place by the door. "This is Shadowcreek Ranch." "Elena," she replied after a pause. "Elena Vasquez. And this is Miguel." She gently stroked the boy's hair. "Say hello to Mr. McCall, Mijo." The boy turned his face slightly, regarding me with solemn eyes. "Hello," he whispered, then buried his face again in his mother's shoulder. "He's tired," Elena explained. "We've been traveling for 2 days." I nodded, moving to the kitchen. "You both look like you could use some water and food. Then maybe you can tell me who exactly is coming after you." Elena followed, easing Miguel onto a chair at the worn kitchen table. The boy sat quietly, his stuffed rabbit placed carefully beside him, its floppy ears stained and worn thin from years of love. "His name is Senor Hop," Miguel said suddenly, noticing my glance at the toy. "He protects me." "Good job, Senor Hop," I replied seriously. The boy's mouth quirked up slightly. Not quite a smile, but close. I set glasses of water in front of them both, which Elena drank gratefully. Miguel took smaller sips, his eyes never leaving my face, studying me with the wary assessment of a child who has learned to be cautious of adults. While I heated leftover stew on the stove, Elena spoke in hushed tones, clearly trying to shield Miguel from the worst of her story. But in the quiet kitchen, every word carried. "My husband," she began, her fingers twisting a gold band on her left hand. "Miguel's father. He's powerful, wealthy, the kind of man who gets what he wants." Her voice hardened. And he doesn't like losing what he considers his property. I set bowls of stew before them, watching as Miguel picked up his spoon with careful deliberation, waiting for his mother's nod before beginning to eat. "You're running from him," I stated rather than asked. Elena's eyes met mine, defiant now. He hurt Miguel. For the first time, he hurt our son. Her hand moved unconsciously to touch the bruise on her cheek. I could endure what he did to me. I made excuses for years. But Miguel, that was the line. I understood lines. The kind you don't cross. The kind that, once crossed, change everything that comes after. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. "How did you find this place?" I asked. The question that had been nagging since they appeared. Shadow Creek wasn't on any maps. I'd made sure of that years ago. "My friend Lucia," Elena said. "She works as a housekeeper for one of Roberto's business associates. She overheard them talking about a ranch out here. A man who minded his own business and made others do the same." She hesitated. "She said you helped someone once. Someone like me." I stiffened. That was history I didn't discuss. Ancient history. Your friend heard wrong. Elena's face fell, but she nodded with quiet dignity. "I understand. We'll leave at first light. I just needed somewhere safe for Miguel to sleep tonight." The boy had finished his stew and was now fighting to keep his eyes open, the long day finally catching up to him. His head nodded forward, then jerked up as he forced himself awake. "The spare room has a bed," I said, surprising myself. "You both can use it." Elena helped her drowsy son from the chair. "Thank you, Mr. McCall. We won't be any trouble." I showed them to the small second bedroom, rarely used, but kept clean out of habit rather than hope for visitors. Elena tucked Miguel into the bed. Senor Hop nestled in the crook of his arm. The boy was asleep almost instantly, the deep, trusting sleep of childhood that seemed at odds with the fear I'd seen in his eyes earlier. Elena smoothed his hair back from his forehead, a gesture so tender it made me look away, feeling like an intruder on something private and precious. Back in the kitchen, she sat across from me, her posture straight despite the exhaustion evident in the shadows beneath her eyes. "He'll find us," she said quietly. "Roberto has resources, men on his payroll, police, judges." Her fingers resumed their nervous twisting of her wedding ring. "I managed to take some cash, our passports. I have a plan to get us to my cousin in Canada, but we need to keep moving." "These men he has looking for you," I said, choosing my words carefully. "How far would they go?" Her eyes met mine, steady and certain. "As far as he tells them to. Roberto doesn't tolerate disobedience or disrespect. And by leaving, I've done both." I nodded, understanding more than she realized. Men like her husband were a particular breed. I'd encountered them before. Men who confused ownership with love, control with respect. "Get some rest," I advised. "We'll figure out next steps in the morning." But morning came sooner than expected. A distant sound jolted me awake just before dawn. The unmistakable rumble of vehicles on the approach road. I was on my feet instantly, pulling on boots and grabbing the shotgun in one fluid motion born of years living on edge. I knocked once on the spare room door before pushing it open. Elena was already awake, her face pale in the pre-dawn light filtering through the window. "They're here," I said simply. Fear flashed across her face, quickly replaced by resignation. "How many?" "Can't tell yet. At least 2 vehicles." I handed her the old revolver I kept in the bedside table. "You know how to use this?" She took it with steady hands. "Yes." "Good. Stay with Miguel. There's a cellar trapdoor under the rug. If things go bad, that's your way out. Leads to a tunnel that comes out near the creek bed." Her eyes widened slightly. "You've prepared for this." "Not this specifically," I admitted. "But in my experience, it's better to have options." Elena moved to wake Miguel, whispering soothingly to him as he blinked in confusion. I left them to prepare and went to face whatever was coming up my drive. The first light of dawn revealed two black SUVs with tinted windows kicking up dust as they approached. City vehicles, expensive ones. They stopped about 50 yards from the house, car doors opening in unison. 4 men emerged. 3 wore suits despite the desert heat, their stances marking them as hired muscle. The 4th man stepped forward, tall, impeccably dressed in a light linen suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my cattle earnings. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his face handsome in the cold, sculpted way of men who cared deeply about appearances. Roberto Vasquez. Had to be. He carried himself like a man accustomed to being the most powerful person in any room. I stood on my porch, shotgun held casually but visibly at my side, and waited. Let them come to me. My land, my rules. Good morning, Vasquez called as they approached, his voice pleasant, touched with the faint remains of an accent. I apologize for the early intrusion, but I'm looking for my wife and son. I believe they might have passed this way. I kept my face neutral. Don't get many visitors out here. Vasquez smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. Mr. McCall, isn't it? Daniel McCall? He glanced around the ranch with the dismissive assessment of a man accustomed to much more. I admire the solitude. Sometimes I think about leaving the noise of the city myself. I didn't ask how he knew my name. Men like him made it their business to know things. My wife is unwell, Vasquez continued, taking my silence as invitation to keep talking. She's been struggling emotionally, taking my son without permission, making up stories. He sighed, a practiced display of concern. I just want to bring them home where they belong, where they're safe. One of his men had begun drifting toward the side of the house, attempting to look casual about it. I shifted my stance slightly, making sure the shotgun was visible to him. I'd prefer if your men stayed where I can see them, I said evenly. Vasquez made a small gesture, and the man stopped moving. Of course, my apologies, we're all a bit on edge. A father worried about his child, you understand. I did understand worry. And fear. I'd seen both in Miguel's eyes the night before. Like I said, I repeated, don't get many visitors. Vasquez's pleasant mask slipped, just for a moment. A flash of something cold and dangerous in his eyes before the smile returned. Mr. McCall, I respect your privacy, I do. But this is a family matter. He reached into his jacket, producing a photograph. My son, 5 years old. His mother took him from school 2 days ago. He needs his medication, his familiar surroundings. His voice hardened slightly. I have the resources to make this search very thorough. It would be better for everyone if you'd simply tell me if you've seen them. I studied the photograph. Miguel smiled out from it, but it wasn't the same boy I'd met last night. This smile didn't reach his eyes either. Handsome kid, I said, handing it back. Hope you find him. Vasquez took the photo, his fingers brushing mine deliberately. His hand was soft, uncalloused. A man who gave orders but never did the work himself. I will find him, he said. All pretense of friendliness gone now. The question is how difficult the process will be. He gestured around my ranch. You have a good operation here. It would be a shame if there were problems with your water rights. Or grazing permits. Or perhaps a visit from the tax authorities. I'd faced down worse threats than bureaucracy. Is that supposed to scare me? It's supposed to encourage cooperation, Vasquez replied smoothly. I'm a businessman, Mr. McCall. Everything has a price. Name yours. Before I could answer, the soft creak of the screen door behind me made my heart sink. I turned to see Miguel standing there, Senor Hop clutched to his chest, Elena right behind him with panic in her eyes. Papa, Miguel said, his voice small but clear in the morning stillness. Vasquez's face transformed, a smile spreading across it as he moved forward. Miguel, there you are, Micho. You had me so worried. I shifted, blocking his path. Elena pulled Miguel back behind her, one hand still hidden in the folds of her dress, where I knew she held the revolver. Roberto, she said, her voice surprisingly steady. Go home. We're not coming back. Vasquez's smile vanished. Don't be ridiculous, Elena. Of course you're coming home. This little adventure is over. His eyes flicked to me, then back to her. What lies have you been telling now? What stories about me? No stories, she replied. Just the truth. I saw what you did to Miguel's arm. The doctor saw too. Something dangerous flashed across Vasquez's face. Accidents happen. Children fall. You're overreacting as usual. Children don't fall in perfect handprint bruises, Elena said, her voice rising slightly. The doctor took pictures, Roberto, and I have copies. Vasquez's men shifted uncomfortably, exchanging glances. One of them, the oldest, with gray at his temples, looked particularly troubled by this revelation. That's enough, Vasquez snapped. Miguel, come here, now. The boy flinched but didn't move, pressing himself closer to his mother's legs. Vasquez took another step forward, and I raised the shotgun slightly. Not aiming, but a clear warning. The boy stays where he is until he decides otherwise, I said quietly. Vasquez's face darkened with fury. This doesn't concern you, rancher. That's my son. I'm not going, Papa, Miguel said suddenly, his voice small but determined. You hurt me, and you hurt Mama. Silence fell, heavy and charged. Even the desert birds seemed to hold their breath. Miguel, Vasquez said, his voice dangerously soft. You don't understand adult matters. Come here now, or there will be consequences. The threat hung in the air, and I saw Miguel's resolve waver. The boy looked up at his mother, then at me, uncertainty in his eyes. No one's threatening the boy, I said. My voice pitched to carry to Vasquez's men as well. Not on my land. Vasquez turned to me, rage barely contained behind his polished exterior. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I could destroy everything you have with one phone call. Maybe, I acknowledged. But you wouldn't leave this property to make that call. His eyes widened slightly, recognizing the threat for what it was. One of his men, not the older one, but a younger, twitchier one, reached inside his jacket. I wouldn't, I advised, the shotgun now leveled steadily. Elena stepped forward, positioning herself beside me, the revolver now visible in her hand. It's over, Roberto. Go back to your empire. Build another one if you have to. But Miguel and I are done. Vasquez stared at her with naked hatred. You think you can threaten me? On the word of some desert hermit with a shotgun? He laughed, a cold sound. I own judges, Elena, police, politicians. You think your cousin in Canada can protect you? I'll find you there too. I'll always find you. Not if you're in prison, came a new voice. The older security man stepped forward, removing a badge from inside his jacket. Roberto Vasquez, I'm Special Agent Marcus Diaz, FBI. We've been building a case against you for money laundering and tax evasion for 2 years. He nodded toward Elena. Your wife's testimony about domestic abuse and child endangerment will be an interesting addition. Vasquez's face contorted with shock and rage. You work for me. I vetted you myself. You vetted Marcus Rodriguez, former private security specialist, the agent corrected. The real Rodriguez is enjoying early retirement in Florida, courtesy of the federal government. The other 2 security men, clearly caught off guard, looked to Vasquez for direction. The younger one still had his hand inside his jacket. I wouldn't, Agent Diaz repeated my earlier warning, his own weapon now drawn. There are 4 more agents positioned around this property. This operation ends now. As if on cue, 2 more SUVs appeared on the horizon, federal plates visible even at a distance. Vasquez's shoulders sagged as the reality of his situation became clear. The younger security man slowly raised his hands, followed reluctantly by the third man. Roberto Vasquez, you're under arrest, Diaz began, reciting the familiar words as he produced handcuffs. Elena let out a shuddering breath beside me, the revolver trembling slightly in her hand now that the immediate danger had passed. Miguel pressed his face against her leg, refusing to watch as his father was handcuffed and led toward the waiting federal vehicles. It's over, Mijo, Elena whispered, kneeling to embrace her son. It's really over. But I knew better. It was never that simple, never that clean. Once the dust had settled, and statements had been taken, Agent Diaz approached us on the porch, where Elena sat with Miguel, the boy finally sleeping with his head in her lap after the stress of the morning. "Mrs. Vasquez, we'll need you and Miguel to come with us," Diaz said. "Your testimony is crucial, and we need to place you in protective custody until the trial." Elena stroked Miguel's hair. "How long?" "Hard to say. These cases can take months, sometimes years. Roberto has resources, connections. He won't go down without a fight." "Witness protection?" she asked, her voice hollow. Diaz nodded. "Most likely. New identities, new location." "Another life on the run," Elena murmured, looking down at her sleeping son. "Just with different people chasing us." I'd remained silent throughout the exchange, but something in her defeated tone stirred me to speak. "There are alternatives." Both Elena and Agent Diaz looked at me with surprise. "Shadowcreek Ranch is 1,000 acres of the most isolated land in this part of the state," I continued. "No close neighbors. One access road. Defensible. Off the grid in most ways that matter." "Are you suggesting?" Diaz began, brow furrowed. "I'm suggesting that protective custody doesn't have to mean some sterile safe house in the suburbs," I said. "Sometimes the best place to hide is in plain sight, but far from prying eyes." Elena's expression shifted from confusion to dawning hope. "You'd let us stay here? Why would you do that?" I thought about the fear in Miguel's eyes when he first arrived, and the peaceful way he slept now despite everything. I thought about the quiet courage it had taken for Elena to leave everything behind to protect her son. "Because everyone deserves a safe place," I said simply, "and this land has been waiting for someone to bring life back to it." Agent Diaz looked skeptical. "It's unorthodox. The Bureau has protocols." "The Bureau can post agents here," I interrupted. "Build whatever security systems you need. But Miguel deserves some stability after what he's been through, and your case would be stronger with witnesses who aren't worn down from being uprooted again." Diaz considered this, looking from me to Elena and the sleeping boy. "I'd have to clear it with my superiors. There would be conditions." "There always are," I acknowledged. When Diaz stepped away to make his calls, Elena looked up at me with questioning eyes. "Why would you offer this? You don't know us." I gazed out over the land that had been my solitary home for 20 years. Land that had once heard children's laughter before loss and grief drove me into isolation. "Maybe it's time this place was more than just one man's hideout," I said quietly. Elena studied me, seeing more than I was comfortable with. "You're running too, in your own way, aren't you?" Before I could answer, Miguel stirred, blinking up at us with sleepy confusion. "Are the bad men gone?" he asked. "Yes, Mijo," Elena assured him. "They can't hurt us anymore." Miguel sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Do we have to leave now?" "I like it here. Mr. McCall has horses. I saw them from the window." Elena looked at me, a question in her eyes. I met her gaze steadily, making an offer I hadn't planned but somehow felt right down to my bones. "You can stay," I said quietly. "Both of you. If you promise not to run again." "Stay?" Miguel echoed, hope brightening his face. "For how long?" I looked from the boy to his mother, seeing both wariness and longing in her eyes. "For as long as you need. Maybe longer." Elena's expression softened, something like the beginning of trust appearing in her gaze. "I think," she said carefully, "we're tired of running." And in that moment, with the morning sun rising fully over Shadowcreek Ranch, something shifted. Not just for them, but for me as well. The land that had been my fortress, my isolation, suddenly held the possibility of becoming something else entirely. A sanctuary. A home. Perhaps even a new beginning. The first weeks at Shadowcreek Ranch unfolded in a delicate dance of boundaries and beginnings. Elena and Miguel remained officially in protective custody, with a rotation of FBI agents discreetly stationed in a small surveillance cabin at the edge of the property. Agent Diaz visited regularly, bringing updates on the case against Roberto and necessary paperwork for Elena's testimony. The indictment has 27 counts now, Diaz informed us one evening as we sat on the porch. Miguel was already asleep inside, exhausted from a day of exploring the ranch under my careful supervision. Money laundering, tax evasion, witness intimidation, and now child endangerment and domestic abuse. Elena's hands tightened around her coffee mug. Will it be enough to keep him locked away? With your testimony, yes, Diaz assured her. His empire is crumbling, Elena. His associates are turning on him to save themselves. I remained silent during these conversations, feeling like an outsider to their shared purpose. But later, after Diaz departed, Elena often lingered on the porch with me, our silence gradually giving way to cautious conversation. Miguel asked if we could plant a garden, she said one night, her voice soft in the darkness. He's never grown anything before. The soil's good by the south wall, I replied. Gets the right amount of sun. My mother used to grow tomatoes there that would win ribbons at the county fair. Elena turned to me, curious. You grew up here? This was your family home? I hadn't meant to reveal so much, but the words had slipped out naturally. Yes. Third-generation rancher. I gestured toward the distant hills. My grandfather built this place with his bare hands, passed it to my father, who passed it to me. And you'll pass it too, she trailed off, realizing she'd stumbled onto sensitive ground. I never had children, I said simply, leaving the rest unsaid. The failed marriage. The grief that drove me to isolation. The years alone. Elena didn't press further, but the next morning, I found her clearing weeds from the long-abandoned garden plot. Miguel beside her with a child-sized trowel, his face alight with concentration. We need your expertise, Mr. McCall, she called, a tentative smile on her face. Neither of us knows the first thing about desert gardening. That day marked a shift, the first deliberate step towards something beyond coexistence. I showed them how to prepare the soil, which plants could withstand the harsh Arizona climate, how deep to plant each seed. Miguel followed my every instruction with solemn attention, his small hands working alongside mine in the dirt. Will the tomatoes really grow as big as baseballs? He asked, wide-eyed at my descriptions of my mother's garden. Bigger if we do it right, I promised. And sweeter than any you've ever tasted. Elena watched us, something soft and wondering in her expression. Later, as Miguel raced ahead to fill his watering can at the pump, she touched my arm briefly. Thank you, she said, for showing him there are different kinds of men in this world. Different ways of being strong. The words settled deep inside me, warming places long gone cold. Slowly, carefully, the three of us found our rhythm. Elena proved herself capable and determined, insisting on contributing to the running of the ranch rather than being merely a guest. She took over the account books, bringing order to my haphazard record-keeping with the sharp intelligence that had once managed her husband's household. You're being systematically overcharged by your feed supplier, she informed me one evening, spreadsheets laid out on the kitchen table. And underpaid for your beef by the processing plant. I've calculated you're losing nearly $20,000 a year. I stared at her figures, impressed despite myself. Not much I can do about it. Limited options out here. There are always options, Elena replied, a spark of her former corporate wife confidence showing through. Leave it to me. Within a week, she had negotiated new terms with both companies, leveraging connections through Diaz to find alternative suppliers willing to offer fair prices. My bank account reflected the difference immediately. Miguel, meanwhile, blossomed in the freedom and safety of ranch life. The fearful, watchful child of those first days gradually gave way to a curious, energetic boy who followed me like a shadow. Through my daily chores, Senor Hop often tucked securely in the back pocket of his jeans. I taught him to feed the horses, to check fences, to identify the tracks of desert animals. Simple tasks at first, building to more complex ones as he proved himself responsible. His pride in each new skill mastered was a revelation, his smile, when it finally came freely, as bright as the desert sun. I've never seen him like this, Elena confessed one evening as we watched Miguel carefully brushing down my old mare, Dusty, his tongue caught between his teeth in concentration. In the city, with Roberto, he was always so cautious, afraid of making mistakes. No mistakes out here, I replied. just learning opportunities. It wasn't entirely true, of course. Ranch life was unforgiving of serious errors. But I found myself creating safe spaces for Miguel to try and fail, and try again, something I suspected had been rare in his previous life. The garden thrived under our shared care, Miguel racing out each morning to check for new growth, his excitement over each sprouting seedling infectious. Elena took to cooking with an enthusiasm that surprised her, experimenting with the simple ingredients available to us, filling the kitchen with aromas that made the old house feel lived in again. But shadows remained. Miguel's nightmares came frequently at first, terrible dreams that sent him screaming into the darkness, calling for his mother. On those nights, Elena would rock him back to sleep while I kept a respectful distance, helpless against the demons that haunted the boy's sleep. Elena had her own ghosts. Sometimes I'd find her staring out across the desert, her expression distant and pained. Other times, a sudden noise, a door slamming, a pot dropped, would make her flinch, her body instinctively bracing for a blow that wouldn't come. Recovery isn't linear, Agent Diaz told me during one of his visits, watching Elena and Miguel working in the garden. They've been through trauma. There will be good days and bad, setbacks and breakthroughs. What can I do? I asked, the question surprising us both. Diaz considered me thoughtfully. What you're already doing. Providing safety, consistency, space to heal. It didn't feel like enough, but I continued as I had begun, offering quiet stability, respecting boundaries, being present without imposing. And gradually, almost imperceptibly, those boundaries began to soften. The first major breakthrough came nearly 2 months after their arrival. I was repairing a section of fence in the north pasture when I heard hoofbeats approaching. Elena rode toward me on Maverick, my younger gelding, her seat surprisingly confident for someone who'd only recently learned to ride. Miguel's with Lena, she said, referring to the female FBI agent who often took the day shift. I thought I might help with the fence. I raised an eyebrow, taking in her determined expression. It's hard work. I'm stronger than I look, she replied, dismounting with growing grace. And I'm tired of feeling useless. You've never been useless, I said, handing her a pair of work gloves. But I won't turn down an extra pair of hands. We worked side by side through the afternoon, Elena matching my pace despite her inexperience. Her hands blistered, but she never complained, her face set with the same quiet determination I'd seen that first night when she stood protecting her son. Roberto never let me do physical work, she said as we took a water break in the shade of a mesquite tree. Said it wasn't appropriate for his wife. His loss, I replied simply. You're a natural. A smile touched her lips, small but genuine. I was raised on a farm in New Mexico. Before college, before Roberto. My father believed everyone should know how to work with their hands. Smart man. Yes, she agreed, softly, though I forgot that for a long time. When we returned to the ranch house that evening, dusty and tired but satisfied with our progress, Miguel ran to greet us, his face alight with excitement. Look what I made, he exclaimed, holding up a crude but recognizable wooden figure. It's a horse, like Dusty. Agent Lena showed me how to whittle, he explained proudly. I only cut myself once, and I didn't even cry. Elena's eyes widened in alarm at this admission, but I knelt to examine the small bandage on his thumb before focusing on his creation. That's fine work, I said seriously. Good detail on the mane. You've got a steady hand. Miguel beamed, then hesitated before holding the carving out to me. It's for you. To say thank you for teaching me about the ranch. Something tightened in my chest as I accepted his gift. This is special, Miguel. I'll keep it right here. I placed it on the mantel, next to a photograph of my parents on their wedding day, the only personal item displayed in the sparse living room. That night, for the first time, Miguel asked if I would read his bedtime story instead of Elena. I glanced at her, uncertain, but she nodded encouragement. He's been talking about asking you all day, she whispered as I followed Miguel to his room. My old childhood bedroom, now brightened with drawings he'd made and a colorful quilt Elena had purchased on a supervised trip into town. I sat awkwardly on the edge of his bed, the children's book he'd selected feeling strange in my calloused hands. But as I began to read, Miguel snuggled closer, Señor Hop tucked under his chin, his trust a tangible weight against my side. By the time I finished the story, he was breathing deeply, his face peaceful in sleep. I carefully extracted myself, tucking the blanket around his shoulders before turning to find Elena watching from the doorway, something unreadable in her expression. "You're good with him," she said as we moved to the living room. "Natural, like you've been doing it for years." I shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. Kids aren't so different from colts. They need patience, clear boundaries, and room to run. Elena laughed softly. "I don't think the parenting books would put it quite that way, but you're not wrong." She hesitated. "Miguel hasn't let his guard down like this since before things got bad with Roberto. He trusts you." The weight of that trust settled on my shoulders, terrifying and precious in equal measure. The seasons turned, summer heat giving way to the gentler warmth of desert autumn. The garden yielded its bounty, Miguel's pride in each harvested tomato and pepper a joy to witness. Elena expanded her role in managing the ranch's business affairs, her sharp mind finding efficiencies and opportunities I'd never considered. The FBI maintained their watchful presence, but their visits became less frequent as Roberto's case progressed through the legal system. His financial empire continued to crumble, former associates turning state's evidence to save themselves. But Elena remained cautious, never venturing beyond the ranch boundaries without security, always watchful when strangers appeared on our property. "Roberto has resources we haven't found yet," she explained when I questioned her continued vigilance. "Men loyal to him, not just his money. I can't risk Miguel's safety. Not ever again." I understood her fear, respected it. But I also saw how it constrained her, kept her tethered to the past even as she built something new. The catalyst for change came unexpectedly, on a crisp November morning. Miguel and I were checking cattle in the east pasture when his pony, a gentle old mare named Buttercup, stepped in a prairie dog hole and stumbled. Miguel, still learning the finer points of riding, tumbled forward over her neck and hit the ground hard. My heart stopped as I dismounted and raced to his side, terrified of what I might find. But Miguel was already pushing himself up, tears streaming down his dirt-smudged face, more scared than hurt. "I fell off," he sobbed as I knelt beside him, my hands checking for injuries with gentle efficiency. "You sure did," I agreed, relief flooding through me as I confirmed nothing was broken. "That was quite a tumble. Am I in trouble?" he asked, hiccuping through his tears. "For falling?" "No, partner. Everyone falls sometimes." I helped him to his feet, brushing dust from his clothes. "The important thing is getting back up." Miguel looked dubiously at Buttercup, who stood patiently nearby, seemingly unperturbed by the whole incident. "I don't want to," he whispered, fear plain in his voice. I considered him thoughtfully. "That's your choice. We can walk back to the ranch. But tomorrow, you'll need to decide if you're going to ride again." "What if I fall again?" "You probably will someday," I said honestly. "I've been riding for 40 years, and I still take a spill now and then. But each time gets a little easier, because you learn from the last fall." Miguel wiped his nose on his sleeve, considering this. "Did you ever fall and get hurt really bad?" "Broke my arm when I was about your age," I admitted. "Cried like a baby. My father had to carry me all the way back to the house." This confession seemed to surprise him. "You cried?" "Sure did. Hurt like the dickens." "But you got back on?" "As soon as the cast came off," I confirmed. "Being afraid is natural, Miguel. Courage isn't about not feeling fear. It's about feeling it and doing what needs doing anyway." He thought about this, his young face serious. Then, with a determined set to his jaw that reminded me forcefully of his mother, he said, "I want to get back on. Now. Before I get too scared." Pride swelled in my chest as I helped him remount, staying close as Buttercup carried him carefully back to the ranch. Elena was waiting at the corral, having spotted us from the house, alarm clear on her face as she noticed the dirt on Miguel's clothes and the tear tracks on his cheeks. "What happened?" she demanded, helping him down from the saddle. "I fell off, Mama," Miguel announced, a note of pride in his voice now. "But I got back on, just like Daniel taught me. Because that's what brave people do." Elena's eyes met mine over his head, a complex mix of emotions in her gaze. "Yes," she agreed softly. "That's exactly what brave people do." That evening, after Miguel was asleep, Elena joined me on the porch where I sat enjoying the cool night air. Without speaking, she handed me a glass of whiskey and took the chair beside mine, her own glass cradled between her palms. "Thank you," she said after a long silence, "for teaching him about courage." I shrugged, uncomfortable with her gratitude. "Just ranch wisdom, nothing special." "It is special," she insisted. "Roberto taught him that mistakes meant punishment. That fear was weakness. You're teaching him something different, something true." I sipped my whiskey, unsure how to respond. Elena continued, her voice quieter now. "I've been thinking about what you said to Miguel. About feeling fear, but doing what needs doing anyway." She turned to look at me directly. "I need to testify in person next month. Diaz says it's time. They need me to face Roberto in court." Concern tightened my chest. "Is that safe?" "Diaz says they can provide security, and it's necessary. The case is stronger with my direct testimony." She took a steadying breath. "I'm terrified, but I need to do this. For Miguel. For myself." I nodded slowly, understanding. "You're one of the bravest people I've ever met, Elena. You'll get through this." She laughed softly, without humor. "I don't feel brave. I feel like I might shatter into a million pieces the moment I see him again." Without thinking, I reached across the space between us, covering her hand with mine. "But you won't. You're stronger than you know." Her fingers turned, intertwining with mine, the contact sending warmth up my arm. We sat that way for a long time, connected in the quiet darkness, the weight of her upcoming ordeal hanging between us. "Will you keep Miguel here?" she asked finally. "While I'm gone? He shouldn't have to see his father like that, or be anywhere near him." "Of course," I promised. "He'll be safe with me." Elena's hand tightened around mine. "I know he will. That's never been in question." The court date approached with the inevitability of an oncoming storm. Elena prepared with grim determination, working with prosecutors to review her testimony, steeling herself for the confrontation to come. Miguel, sensitive to his mother's tension, grew clingy and anxious, his nightmares returning with new intensity. "Why can't you stay here?" he demanded the night before she was scheduled to leave. "Why do you have to go see Papa?" Elena held him close, her eyes meeting mine over his head. "Because sometimes, Mijo, we have to face the hard things to make sure they never hurt us again. Remember what Daniel taught you about courage?" Miguel sniffled against her shoulder. "Feeling scared, but doing it anyway." "That's right," she whispered. "And I need to be brave now, so that we can be truly free. Free to build our new life here." The words hung in the air between us, the first time either of us had acknowledged that what we were building might be permanent, not just a temporary refuge. The morning of her departure dawned clear and cool. Agent Diaz arrived with 2 other agents and an armored SUV. Elena knelt before Miguel on the porch, her hands gentle on his shoulders. "I'll be back in 3 days," she promised. "And you'll have so much fun with Daniel that you'll hardly notice I'm gone." Miguel's lower lip trembled, but he nodded bravely. "I'll take care of the garden and help with the horses. And Senor Hop will protect me. That's my brave boy." Elena hugged him fiercely, then turned to me. "Thank you," she said simply. "We'll be fine," I assured her. "You just focus on what you need to do." She nodded, her composure slipping just slightly as she glanced back at the ranch house, the place that had become her sanctuary. Then, with a straightening of her shoulders, she walked to the waiting vehicle, not looking back as it pulled away down the long drive. Miguel and I watched until the dust cloud disappeared over the horizon. His small hand found mine, clutching it with surprising strength. "She'll come back, right?" he asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. I squeezed his hand gently. "Your mama is the strongest person I know." She'll come back. That's a promise. But as we turned back to the suddenly empty-feeling house, I couldn't quite silence the worry in my own heart. Roberto Vasquez was a dangerous man, even behind bars, and Elena was walking straight into his territory, armed with nothing but her truth and her courage. The ranch seemed different without her presence, quieter, less vibrant somehow. I kept Miguel busy with chores and projects, trying to maintain normalcy while we both watched the clock, counting down the hours until her return. On the second night, unable to sleep, I stepped onto the porch to find Miguel already there. Senor Hop clutched to his chest as he stared out into the darkness. "Bad dream?" I asked, settling beside him on the step. He nodded. Papa was hurting Mama again, and I couldn't stop him. My heart ached for this child who had seen things no child should witness. "Your Mama is safe, Miguel. Agent Diaz and his team are with her every minute." "But Papa has lots of money," Miguel said with the simple logic of childhood. "He can make bad things happen even when he's not there. He told me that once, when I was scared to go to school. He said he could always find me, no matter where I was." The casual cruelty of such a threat to a child stunned me into momentary silence. When I found my voice, I chose my words with care. "Money is powerful," I acknowledged, "but there are stronger things in this world." Miguel looked up at me, moonlight silvering his solemn face. "Like what?" "Like love," I said simply. "Like courage. Like doing what's right. Even when it's hard. Those are the things your Mama has on her side. And in my experience, they win in the end, even if the battle is long." He considered this, his young mind wrestling with concepts too complex for his years. "Daniel," he said finally, "are you going to be my new papa?" The question caught me completely off guard. That's not... Your Mama and I haven't discussed anything like that." "But you like us," Miguel persisted. "And we like you. And we want to stay forever. Mama said so." My heart stuttered at this revelation. "She did?" Miguel nodded, certain in the way only children can be. "She told Agent Diaz that she didn't want to leave Shadowcreek. Ever. That she feels safe here. With you." I sat with this information, warmth spreading through my chest despite the cool night air. "Well," I said carefully, "right now the important thing is making sure your Mama comes home safe. Then we can talk about forever. Okay?" Miguel nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Okay. But I think you'd be a good papa. You don't yell or break things or make Mama cry." The simplicity of his criteria, the bar set so low by his biological father's behavior, filled me with equal parts sadness and determination. This boy deserved so much better. And maybe, just maybe, I could be part of giving him the life he deserved. "Come on, partner," I said, standing and offering him my hand. "Let's get you back to bed. Tomorrow's a big day. Your Mama's coming home." As Miguel took my hand, trustingly following me back inside, I made a silent promise to him, to Elena, and to myself. Whatever happened next, whatever challenges we faced, they wouldn't face them alone. Not anymore. The family that had arrived on my doorstep, pursued by shadows, had become something precious to me. Something worth protecting. Something worth fighting for. And for the first time in 20 years, Shadowcreek Ranch felt like what it was always meant to be. A home. The morning Elena was due to return dawned with an unexpected chill. A rare autumn storm had swept through overnight, leaving the desert washed clean, the mountains in the distance crowned with a dusting of early snow. Miguel was up before sunrise, too excited to sleep, checking the clock every 5 minutes as if his vigilance could make time move faster. "When will they be here?" he asked for the dozenth time, peering out the window toward the empty access road. "Sometime this afternoon," I reminded him, setting a plate of pancakes on the table. "Eat your breakfast. We've got chores to keep us busy until then." But even the regular rhythm of ranch work couldn't distract us from the anticipation hanging in the air. Miguel went through the motions of his usual tasks, feeding the chickens, helping me check on a pregnant mare in the barn, but his mind was clearly elsewhere, his eyes constantly drifting toward the horizon. By early afternoon, even I was growing restless, Agent Diaz had promised to call when they left the courthouse, but my ancient landline had remained stubbornly silent. I told myself it meant nothing. Court proceedings were unpredictable, delays common, but a knot of worry tightened in my stomach with each passing hour. Miguel and I were mending tack in the barn when the sound of an approaching vehicle made us both freeze. We exchanged a quick glance before dropping everything and rushing outside, but instead of the expected FBI convoy, a single unmarked sedan was coming up the drive, dust billowing behind it. I stepped in front of Miguel instinctively, one hand reaching back to keep him behind me, the other moving toward the knife at my belt. The car stopped and a woman emerged. Not Elena, but Assistant District Attorney Kate Harrison, whom I recognized from her previous visits to prepare Elena's testimony. Her expression sent ice through my veins before she even spoke. "Mr. McCall," she greeted me, her professional demeanor firmly in place despite the tension evident in her posture. "We need to talk. Privately." Miguel clutched at my leg. "Where's my mama? She's supposed to come home today." Ada Harrison's face softened as she looked at the boy. "Your mother is fine, Miguel, but there's been a complication. She asked me to come explain to Mr. McCall." "Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of Miguel," I replied, my arm now firmly around the boy's shoulders. "We don't keep secrets in this family." The word family slipped out without thought, but I didn't correct myself. Harrison seemed to weigh her options before nodding shortly. "Very well, let's go inside." At the kitchen table, Harrison declined coffee, getting straight to the point. Roberto made a move we didn't anticipate. After Elena's testimony, which was powerful and damaging to his case, his lawyers approached us with a deal. "What kind of deal?" I asked, dread pooling in my gut. "Information. Names, account numbers, evidence against people even higher up the chain. People we've been trying to build cases against for years." She spread her hands. "In exchange, he wants certain considerations." Reduced charges, I guessed, anger beginning to simmer beneath my concern. "Some," Harrison acknowledged, "but nothing that would get him out anytime soon. That wasn't his priority." Miguel, who had been listening with intense concentration, spoke up. "What did Papa want?" Harrison met his gaze directly, her voice gentling. "He wanted to see you, Miguel. To talk to you." "No," I said immediately, protectively pulling Miguel closer. "Absolutely not." "That was Elena's response as well," Harrison assured me. "She refused immediately. But Roberto anticipated that. He had a backup demand." "Which was?" "A private conversation with Elena. No recording, no witnesses. Just the two of them." The simmering anger flared hotter. "And you agreed to this? After everything he's done to her?" "It wasn't my decision," Harrison said, a flash of her own frustration showing through. "This came from much higher up. The information Roberto is offering could dismantle multiple criminal enterprises." The U.S. attorney felt it was worth the risk. "Risk," I repeated, the word bitter on my tongue. "You're using her as bait." "We took precautions," Harrison countered. "The room was swept for weapons. 2 agents were stationed right outside the door. Elena agreed to wear a panic button." "But she's still alone with him right now?" I demanded, rising from my chair. "No," Harrison said, raising a hand to calm me. "The meeting happened this morning. It's over." Relief flooded through me, quickly followed by renewed concern. "Then where is she?" "Why didn't she come back with you?" Harrison hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Elena asked for some time. The conversation with Roberto was difficult. She needed space to process." "What did he say to her?" Miguel asked, his voice small but insistent. "Did he hurt her again?" Harrison shook her head. "No physical harm, Miguel. But sometimes words can be painful too." "Did she say when she's coming back?" I asked, trying to keep the worry from my voice for Miguel's sake. "That's part of why I'm here," Harrison replied. "She asked me to bring this." She withdrew an envelope from her briefcase and handed it to me. My name was written on the front in Elena's neat handwriting. My hands felt oddly numb as I took it. She could have called. I think she was afraid she might lose her resolve if she heard your voices, Harrison said quietly. Read it. I'll wait outside and give you some privacy. After she left, Miguel pressed against my side. What does it say? Is Mama coming home? Let's find out together, I said, opening the envelope with care. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered front and back with Elena's writing. I cleared my throat and began to read aloud, carefully monitoring my tone for Miguel's sake. Dear Daniel and Miguel, the letter began. I'm sorry I couldn't come home today as planned. Seeing Roberto again has shaken me more than I expected. He reminded me of things I've been trying to forget. Not just the bad times, but the good ones too. The dreams we once shared. The family we tried to be. I paused, something cold and heavy settling in my chest, but continued at Miguel's anxious prompting. He's asked me for forgiveness, claiming he's found God in prison. He's promised to change, to be the husband and father he should have been. I don't believe him. Not really, but his words made me realize something important. I've been hiding at Shadowcreek, using you both as a shield against facing my own fears. Miguel's fingers dug into my arm. What does that mean? Doesn't she want to live with us anymore? Let me finish, buddy, I said gently, though the same fear was tightening my throat. I continued reading. I need time to find my own strength again. To remember who I was before Roberto, before I became someone who needed to be saved. Agent Diaz has arranged for me to stay with my cousin in Santa Fe for a while. A few weeks, maybe a month. Miguel, my precious boy, this doesn't mean I don't love you with all my heart. I do, and that will never change. But I need to become the mother you deserve, one who stands on her own, not one who hides behind others. Tears were streaming down Miguel's cheeks now, silent and heartbreaking. I pulled him onto my lap as I finished the letter. Daniel, I'm trusting you with what I love most in this world. Take care of our boy until I return. And please help him understand that sometimes people need to step away to find their way back. I promise I will come back, stronger and more certain of the future I want for us all, with love and gratitude, Elena. The silence that followed felt endless, broken only by Miguel's quiet sniffles against my shirt. She's not coming back, he finally whispered, the words muffled against my chest. Just like when Papa said he was going on a business trip, but really went to live with that other lady. This is different, I said firmly, though my own heart was heavy with doubt. Your mama has never lied to you, has she? Miguel shook his head reluctantly. Then if she says she's coming back, she will. She just needs some time to think, that's all. How much time? He asked, his eyes seeking reassurance I wasn't entirely sure I could provide. I don't know, partner, but we'll keep things running here until she returns. Keep her garden growing. Take care of the horses. Make her proud of us. Miguel wiped his nose on his sleeve. Promise you won't leave too? The question pierced straight through me. I'm not going anywhere, Miguel. This is my home. And as long as I'm here, you have a place here too. That's a promise. When Harrison left an hour later, after explaining the practical details of Elena's temporary relocation, Miguel and I stood on the porch watching her car disappear the same way we had watched Elena leave 3 days before. The sense of déjà vu was painful, the emptiness that followed even more acute. That night, Miguel refused to sleep in his own bed, dragging his blanket and pillow into my room instead. I didn't have the heart to deny him, so I made a pallet on the floor beside my bed. I can take the floor, I offered. You can have the bed. No, he insisted. I want to sleep here. He patted the makeshift bed, Senor Hop already positioned on the pillow. So I can protect you. My throat tightened with emotion. Protect me? Miguel nodded solemnly. So you don't get sad and leave like Mama did. I knelt beside him, looking directly into his eyes. Miguel, your Mama didn't leave because she was sad. She left to become stronger. And she's coming back. But what if she doesn't? His voice quavered. What if she decides she doesn't want us anymore? That will never happen, I said with more conviction than I felt. Your Mama loves you more than anything in this world. But sometimes grown-ups need to figure things out on their own. It doesn't mean they're abandoning the people they love. Miguel considered this, doubt still evident in his expression. Can I still sleep in here? Just until she comes back? Of course, partner. As long as you need. The days that followed settled into a new rhythm, different from before, marked by Miguel's quieter demeanor and my own preoccupation. Elena called every evening, her conversations with Miguel filled with reassurances and questions about his day. With me, she was more reserved, our exchanges brief and focused on Miguel's well-being rather than her own situation or when she might return. "He's doing okay," I told her after the first week. "Missing you something fierce, but he's tough, like his mama." "And you?" she asked softly. "How are you, Daniel?" The question caught me off guard. "I'm fine. Ranch keeps me busy." "That's not what I asked," she pressed gently. I sighed, allowing some of my frustration to show. "You want the truth? I'm angry. Not at you," I added quickly. "At Roberto, at the situation, at myself for not being able to fix this for either of you." "Some things can't be fixed by someone else," Elena said, her voice tired but determined. "That's what I'm trying to learn. I spent years letting Roberto control me, then months letting you protect me. I need to find my own strength again." "I understand that," I said, though part of me didn't, not completely. "Just don't stay away too long. There's a little boy here who needs his mother." "I know," she whispered. "I need him too, more than I can say." The unspoken question hung between us. And what about us? What about what we were beginning to build? But neither of us gave it voice. October bled into November. The garden yielded its final harvest before the first frost. Miguel and I preserved what we could, following Elena's careful instructions over the phone. We settled into our routines. Ranch work during the day, quiet evenings by the fire, Miguel still sleeping on his pallet in my room, despite my gentle suggestions that he might be more comfortable in his own bed. "It's warmer in here," he insisted, though we both knew that wasn't the real reason. Agent Diaz visited periodically, bringing updates on Roberto's case. The information he'd provided had indeed led to several high-profile arrests, but his own plea deal was still being negotiated. Meanwhile, Elena had begun taking classes at a community college in Santa Fe, working part-time at her cousin's bookstore. "She's doing well," Diaz assured me. "Building a life that's hers alone, not defined by Roberto or by running from him." I nodded, trying to be glad for her while ignoring the hollow feeling in my chest. "Any word on when she might come back?" Diaz's expression was sympathetic but non-committal. "She talks about it often, but she's still figuring things out." Thanksgiving approached, bringing with it the first real test of our new normal. Elena called with news that made Miguel bounce with excitement for the first time in weeks. "I'm coming for Thanksgiving," she announced, "just for the day. I'll drive over Thursday morning and head back Friday." "Really?" Miguel's face lit up. "You promise?" "I promise, mijo. I wouldn't miss it." After the call, Miguel threw himself into preparations with newfound energy. "We need to make the house perfect," he declared, "and cook a big dinner, with turkey and mashed potatoes and everything." I hadn't celebrated Thanksgiving properly in years, usually marking the day with nothing more special than a store-bought pie eaten alone on the porch. But seeing Miguel's enthusiasm, I found myself caught up in his excitement. "All right, partner. Let's make a plan." The days before Thanksgiving found us deep cleaning the ranch house, making trips into town for groceries, and poring over recipe books I hadn't opened since my mother was alive. Miguel insisted on making decorations, paper turkeys and construction paper leaves that we hung around the living room and kitchen. "Do you think Mama will like it?" he asked anxiously as we surveyed our handiwork the night before her visit. "She'll love it," I assured him. "It looks like a proper holiday in here." For the first time since Elena left, Miguel slept in his own room that night, too excited about her visit to maintain his vigil by my bedside. I sat alone on the porch long after he went to bed, watching the stars and wondering what tomorrow would bring. Elena arrived just after sunrise, her small car kicking up dust on the approach road. Miguel was already waiting on the porch, having been up since before dawn, too excited to sleep. He ran to meet her as she parked, flinging himself into her arms the moment she stepped out. "Mama, you came back!" "Of course I did, mijo. I promised, didn't I?" She held him tightly, closing her eyes as she breathed him in. When she opened them again, she was looking at me over Miguel's head. "Daniel," she said softly. "Thank you for taking care of him." "Always," I replied simply. She looked different somehow, more confident perhaps. Her hair was shorter, falling just below her shoulders in a new style that framed her face. She wore jeans and a simple blue sweater rather than the more formal clothes she'd favored before. But the most noticeable change was in her eyes, clearer now, more direct, with a quiet certainty that hadn't been there before. The day passed in a blur of cooking, laughter, and the kind of easy togetherness that felt both familiar and new. Elena moved through the kitchen with assurance, teaching Miguel family recipes her grandmother had passed down. I found myself watching them together, savoring the wholeness their presence brought to the old ranch house. After dinner, while Miguel showed Elena all the projects we'd completed during her absence, I slipped outside for a moment of quiet. The desert evening was cool and still, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. I heard the screen door open behind me but didn't turn, recognizing Elena's footsteps. She joined me at the porch railing, standing close enough that I could smell the light floral scent of her perfume. For a while, we simply stood together in comfortable silence. "You've done an amazing job with him," she said finally. "He's happier than I've ever seen him. More confident." "He's a good kid," I replied. "Makes it easy." Elena smiled slightly. "We both know that's not true. He has his moments, his fears. But you've helped him through them." She turned to face me directly. "You've given him something I couldn't, Daniel. A sense of security I wasn't able to provide on my own." "You were running for your lives," I pointed out. "Security wasn't exactly an option." "It wasn't just that," she said, shaking her head. "Even before Roberto turned violent, I was always accommodating, smoothing things over, teaching Miguel to walk on eggshells to avoid conflict." Her eyes held mine steadily. "You've taught him that disagreements don't have to be dangerous, that standing your ground doesn't mean someone gets hurt." "Just ranch wisdom," I demurred, uncomfortable with her praise. "No," Elena said firmly. "It's much more than that. It's who you are, Daniel. A man who lives by his principles, who keeps his promises, who faces problems head-on instead of running from them." She looked away briefly. "Unlike me." "You didn't run," I said, surprised by the self-criticism in her voice. "You faced the hardest decision any parent can make, putting your child's safety above everything else. That takes more courage than anything I've ever done." She smiled faintly. "Maybe we're both right. Maybe we've each shown courage in different ways." Her hand moved to cover mine on the railing. "I'm grateful every day that we found our way to your door." "So am I," I admitted, turning my hand to clasp hers. The moment stretched between us, full of unspoken feelings and possibilities. But before either of us could say more, the screen door banged open, and Miguel burst onto the porch. "Mama! Daniel! I found the pie I helped make yesterday. Can we have some now?" "The spell broken," Elena laughed and squeezed my hand once before letting go. "Pie sounds perfect, Mijo. Lead the way." Later, after Miguel had finally succumbed to sleep, exhausted from the excitement of the day, Elena and I sat by the fire with glasses of whiskey, the conversation flowing easily between us. She told me about her classes, her job at the bookstore, the small apartment she shared with her cousin. "It sounds like you're building a good life there," I observed, trying to keep the disappointment from my voice. Elena studied me over the rim of her glass. "It's a necessary life, not a permanent one. A stepping stone." Hope flickered in my chest. "To what?" "That's what I'm still figuring out." She set her glass down, her expression serious. "Roberto's sentencing is next month. After that, the immediate dangers should be past. The U.S. attorney believes the plea deal will result in at least 15 years, possibly more." "That's good news," I said cautiously. "It is," she agreed. "It means Miguel and I can truly start over, make plans for the future without looking over our shoulders." She hesitated. "The question is where that future should be." I took a careful breath. "You know how I feel. This is your home, both of you, for as long as you want it to be." "And if we want it to be forever?" Elena asked softly. "If I want us to be more than just temporary housemates?" My heart thundered in my ears. "Elena, I'm not asking for promises, she interrupted gently. Not yet. I still have things to work through, healing to do. But I need you to know that what I feel for you is real, and growing stronger, not weaker, with distance. I set my own glass down, moving to kneel beside her chair, taking both her hands in mine. I've been alone a long time, Elena. Thought that was how my life would stay. Then you and Miguel showed up, and suddenly everything changed. This old house feels like a home again. The ranch has a purpose beyond just surviving another season. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears as she squeezed my hands. We've both been broken by life in different ways, she whispered. Maybe that's why we recognize something in each other. The possibility of becoming whole again. Maybe, I agreed. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe sometimes people just find each other when they need it most. Elena's smile was luminous in the firelight. Either way, I'm grateful. She glanced toward the hallway where Miguel slept. He asked me today if you could be his new papa someday. Warmth flooded through me. What did you tell him? That some things can't be rushed. That we all need time to be sure. Her eyes met mine, but that I couldn't imagine a better father for him than you. No words seemed adequate for the emotions swelling in my chest. Instead, I leaned forward, pressing my forehead gently against hers. We stayed that way for a long moment, breathing together, content in the simple connection. When Elena left the following morning, the goodbye was different from before, tinged with hope rather than uncertainty. Miguel clung to her, but his tears were brief. You'll come back for Christmas? He asked, seeking reassurance. Sooner than that, Elena promised. The semester ends in 3 weeks. I thought, maybe I could come home then, for good. Miguel's face lit up. Really? No more going away? Number more going away, she confirmed, her eyes finding mine over his head. If that's still what you both want. More than anything, I said simply. As we watched her car disappear down the drive, Miguel's hand securely in mine, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. The journey wasn't over. There would be challenges ahead, adjustments to make, wounds still healing for all of us. But for the first time in more years than I could count, I found myself looking forward rather than back. The desert stretched before us, harsh but beautiful, demanding respect but rewarding perseverance. Not unlike love, I supposed. Not unlike family. Come on, partner, I said, squeezing Miguel's hand gently. We've got work to do before your mama comes home. He looked up at me, trust and hope shining in his eyes. Forever this time. Forever, I confirmed. That's a promise. And promises, as Miguel had learned, were sacred things at Shadowcreek Ranch. As sacred as second chances. As precious as the family we were becoming, one day, one choice, one act of courage at a time. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.